Hi everyone, hope you're well. I just wanted to take an opportunity to post a little video to summarise some of what we shared at our update meeting last Sunday, and particularly for those of you that couldn't be there. We talked about our plans as we look ahead, hopefully, to a time when restrictions are going to begin to lift and we can begin to enjoy some of the benefits of meeting in person again. And I want to remind you of a couple of analogies that I've used over the past year or so during lockdown. First of all, the camping analogy. I don't know if you've ever been on a family camping holiday. Maybe you've been to like a Bible weekend like West Point, or you've just been somewhere as a family camping. And you will know if you've done that the most stressful time is the time, first of all, when you set up camp and you unpack and get things set up. But then the far more stressful time can be actually when the holidays come to an end and you realize you've got to pack everything up, and it can be quite stressful and miserable, can't it? You know, especially if it's wet, raining, the canvas is wet, there's mud around, you've got kids who are cranky. You can't get your canvas back into the bag that it was in before. There's no space left in the car, and it can just be a very stressful event, really. Breaking camp and packing up and moving on. The bit in the middle is relatively straightforward, isn't it? Well, in Numbers 9 we read of how during that wilderness journey through the desert, as God's nomadic people follow this pillar of cloud, that there are times when they have to set up camp, and then there are times when they have to break camp and move on. This is a huge community. It's not just a little nuclear family. There are hundreds of thousands of people, elderly, adults, kids, singles, parents, and they are transporting all of their worldly goods across the wilderness, a massive nomadic movement, if you like. And they would have had to have stopped and put up those tents, but then they would have had, after a period of time, maybe days, maybe weeks, maybe even months actually, settling down to break camp and move on once again. I think that's a helpful analogy for us to prepare ourselves for some of the challenges of the coming season as we, to some sense, break camp and move on. The other analogy is of the landing of an airplane. If you've ever been on long-haul flights, you'll know that the bit in the middle is, can be relatively straightforward unless there's a touch of turbulence. It's the takeoff and it's the landing, isn't it, that gets the adrenaline going and that creates the stress. And the landing particularly can be tricky, especially if there are strong crosswinds. Well, we are entering a time, I think, where we are going to have to break camp. We're going to have to land a plane. And over the coming months, as we trust it's going to be possible to return to some form of in-person meetings as a church community, some of you may be feeling excited at that prospect, but others, I guess, may be terrified. Others may be feeling great anxiety about what that might mean and what that's going to be like. In some senses, it's going to need a lot of planning and preparation, and it may well involve a degree of stress for us. And I want to chat about some of the challenges that we might anticipate and then share with you what our plans are. First of all, challenges then. Let me just mention a few. Overcoming inertia. The initial resistance to change is what inertia is, isn't it? It's when we're settled, when the car is in the rut. And in some senses, we are settled into this strange pattern of online church life, aren't we? We've missed being with one another, certainly, but in some senses I think we've maybe perhaps grown a bit familiar with church life, and with, in particular, the convenience of online church life. It's been possible for us to sit on the sofa and attend church, and sit in our pajamas and attend church. Has not been, for most of us, the need to serve one another in practical ways. There's been no sacrifice, if you like, and so we've been living with a form of church life that has been marked to some degree by convenience. And I just want to remind us that that's not normal. It may have become our new normal, but that is not normal New Testament discipleship or church life. So we need to be ready to overcome some inertia. The inertia of getting out the door, the inertia of re-engaging with all the demands of church life. Secondly, we need to pace ourselves well. And if you're traveling with a mixed community through a wilderness, you certainly need to do that, not leaving anyone behind, not running ahead in a way that's unhelpful. We need to pace ourselves well. Thirdly, we need to rediscover our why. I think as we re-engage with church life, it's a real opportunity for us to rediscover why we are in the church that we're in, why we are investing our time and energy and resources into the life of this local church community and its mission in the wider community. Maybe over the lockdown period you've lost a sense of purpose or direction, and it's been very easy to do that. Maybe as we begin to come out of lockdown, you're asking yourself the question, why am I a part of Junction Church? Well, I think it's a great opportunity for you to be prayerfully asking that question and asking God to restore within you a sense of the very important, indispensable part that you have to play as a member of his body. We need to rediscover our why. We need to recover from a difficult season. For some, this has been mildly traumatic. Some have been very close to the coalface, key workers in particular. Others maybe have lost family members. We've all been through a crisis, and that leaves us with a measure of trauma, actually. So we're going to need to enjoy some recovery and some restoration as we begin to gather and draw on the grace of God and receive the Spirit and serve one another in that way. We're going to need to reintegrate. It's going to be something of a reverse culture shock. The life that we're going back to may continue to include some restrictions we don't yet know, but we're going back to what might be familiar, but actually having been through a prolonged period where we've learned new ways of existing and even relating. And so this is going to be a little bit like going back to a culture that we were once from, but have become to some degree unfamiliar with, and that's going to be something of a challenge. And then finally, we're going to need to face the challenge of resourcing our church life and our mission. I was sharing on Sunday at our update, giving a feedback of some of the financial challenges that we face, and I would encourage you to engage as a disciple of Jesus in the adventure of giving and to be part of what we are by investing a proportion of what you earn in the life and mission of our local church. So, some challenges then. As we then plan forward, there are some principles that we want to shape what we do. We want things to be simple. Going to have to be simple. We're going to be operating, at least initially, with quite low levels of resources. We're all, feeling a little depleted, I guess. And so we want what we do in person as we begin to restart in-person church life to be as simple as it possibly can be. I like simple. There's nothing wrong with simple. Early church in Acts 2 was in some senses very simple. Accessible, secondly. So whilst we're going to start in-person meetings again at some point in the summer, we want those to be accessible to others who can't be there or choose not to be there. And so I think we've learned of some of the benefits of the tools that are out there, and so we want to stream live what we do here in the upper room when we begin in-person meetings, so that those who can't be with us can at least have some measure of accessibility to what we're doing. We want it to be restful, and we realize the last thing we want to do is to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour and find, within a few seconds that we've burned ourselves out. We want to create an environment that's restful, an environment that's conducive to us enjoying this restoration and recovery that I think we all need as we enjoy the presence of God amongst us as a community. We need it to be gradual. as well. So we're not expecting or planning to switch back to, all bells and whistles church life. In fact, there may be some ways in which I'm certain that there will be things that we don't ever do again that we once did, things that we do differently. So we're not looking to provide a, full range of provision for kids and youth and toddlers. We do want to pick up appropriately in time that which God has called us to do, but it's going to be gradual. And so we're going to start with something very simple and work from there. And then we want it to be foundational. That's a very important principle. And by that I mean an opportunity to get back to basics, to rediscover why we're doing what we're doing. What we believe is an essential ingredient of what happens when we gather together. So we want some foundational things to be the things that we return to at this time. So what are our plans then? Well, we're planning, and I say that in inverted commas, because at the moment the government roadmap means that the next kind of key date is the 17th of May, when some further restrictions lift, and from that point on it's possible to gather outdoors in groups of up to 30. And so we want to, subsequent to that date, on May the 23rd and May the 30th, to meet outdoors, to have an opportunity to see one another and begin to reconnect with one another, to enjoy some time together, and for our kids to enjoy time and play together outdoors. We'll give you the details of that. So the first Sunday, the 23rd, happens to be Pentecost Sunday, so we're going to have what we're calling a Pentecost picnic. Again, details of where and when that's going to be. It will be on the Sunday morning through lunchtime. Will be released in time as we get plans in place. But please do put that in your diary. It's in our church calendar, if you like. It's in pencil because things between now and then may continue to change. But we are planning to do that. That will be our first outdoor opportunity to be with one another after what's been a very prolonged time. It will be followed up on the 30th by another outdoor opportunity. And we anticipate that we will, with kids over a certain age, go beyond 30, and so it will most likely be in a big open space, but in two separate groups to stick within the guidelines. So that's what's happening in May, after the May roadmap step that the government's announced. And then from the beginning of June, we are planning, again inverted commas, to begin in-person meetings here on Sunday mornings in the upper room. And those will be safe. They'll be within the guidelines that the government has set. And there's a lot more detail to come out about that between now and then. They will be shorter meetings. They will be, as I've said, very simple. And we are aiming for them to be inclusive in that we will not initially, at least, have a kids group running alongside them. And so we recognize that there may be some kids with us on those occasions, and we want to make what we do to some degree, as much as possible, inclusive of them and accessible to them. And they will, as I've said, be streamed live. So this is going to be an opportunity for us to begin to dip our toes in the water again of in-person church gatherings, to begin to do the things that we've so missed, seeing one another and serving one another, singing with one another as and when that is allowed. And we will, of course, keep our eye very closely on the advice that comes out between now and then, and that will undoubtedly shape a little what we do, and may even shape what the time that we do it. So, for example, if the government says that beyond the June 21st date we can sing, but not before, we may well continue to meet outdoors, because when we're outdoors, we can sing. And as part of our picnic and our church outdoors on May the 30th, we I think we'll include some element of singing one or two songs together. So let me encourage you to brace yourself, to pray that God will give you grace to begin to ask Him where He wants you to fit in the coming season. And it may well be different to ways in which you have served and contributed in the past. We're so glad to know that God's grace has brought us through this time, And as we begin to think about restarting, essentially, church life, I want to encourage you to please join with us. Please be flexible. Please be prayerful. Be understanding. Be full of grace to others. Let's create a wonderful environment where we can begin to really soak in the presence of the Holy Spirit, to enjoy His life in us, and begin to do those things that we have so missed and that are so important if we're going to be those fruitful, healthy disciples that Jesus has called us to be.